Hey, welcome everybody. Mike Montague here, Vice President of Online Learning at Sandler Training, and we have a very special guest today, Brian Kreuzberger. He is the founder of Breakthrough Email, and he's going to be talking about how do we build a prospecting machine that will generate leads for us that are qualified, that they are lined up and ready to go with the right person. And how do we actually get in touch with these right people? There's a lot of cold prospecting challenges, and we're going to talk about some of those best practices today with Brian Kreuzberger. And we'll take your questions too. So we want to make this as interactive as possible. So feel free to go ahead and hit that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and type in a question. And I will do my best to work it into our program today, and we'll do our best to get you a good answer. So Brian, welcome to your webinar here on cold prospecting. How are you doing this morning?
I'm good. I feel like I need a better background than you have. I have background envy.
Well, it's good. You know, this can be distracting too. All we need is your beautiful face.
There you go. So I'm the founder of Breakthrough Email. We generate leads for B2B companies, specifically using email. I'll walk through kind of our process. I'll walk through, how to think about it, common challenges people have. If you have a question or if you or a challenge with outbound with lead generation, put it in the Q&A right now. I'd love to get an idea of kind of where everybody's at. I was at a presentation recently, and everybody put one thing that they wanted to cover. And so as we went back, we covered all the different areas that the different attendees wanted to cover. So go into the Q&A right now. Type in one thing you'd like to learn about, one thing you'd like us to cover, a question you have, whatever it is. And let's take a quick look at that. I'd like to get a poll of kind of where everybody's at. And I want to make sure that
while you're typing in too, I didn't necessarily introduce Sandler Training. I don't know if anybody is familiar with Sandler, but we do sales management and customer service training around the world in over 250 locations. And we're really experts in sales management and customer service, ongoing training that really helps you kind of develop the soft skills and the things that you need in order to be successful in your role. So I always like to talk about success principles, really, when I'm talking about what Sandler is really good at. It's all that stuff they didn't teach you in school. So if you have any questions for me too, we'll jump in there. But we'd like to have you just punch in that Q&A button at the bottom and type a question. And then Brian, I think you can share your screen and the PowerPoint too.
All right, great. Type your questions in here. All right, so just a little bit about my background as it can potentially relate. My background, I worked for a bunch of VC startups, technology, Oracle company, a couple different media companies. One raised 20 million, one raised 80 million. And my job was to get meetings with executives at Fortune 100, Fortune 50 companies. We had no leads. We had great products, but I had no way of reaching kind of that VP C-level person. There were no leads coming in, and I really dislike cold calling. I just kind of found it a waste of time. Most of the time that I was calling people, I was just getting their voicemail and would spend like the whole day feeling like I just kind of wasted the whole day. And I didn't like it. I didn't like receiving the phone calls. So I started using email, but the problem with email was people wouldn't respond, or if they did respond, they weren't really that interested. And so I just kept emailing, and it was my job. It wasn't like it was a choice. It's like if you don't have meetings, you have to generate meetings and get leads. And I wrote 15,000 emails over 7 years, and each email was an individual email. And finally I figured out, okay, there is a process to this. I can get meetings, and there is certain language that people respond to and language that people don't respond to. And then once I started getting those meetings, I started getting higher level meetings, and then deciding whoever I wanted to meet with, and kind of like at will, I could get meetings with whoever. So our company will either generate leads for businesses. So we'll just do this for you. We'll tee up the meetings for your sales team, or we'll teach you guys how to do it. So we'll teach you how to write the email, write the copy, get the meetings, find the database, find the people to reach out to.
So we've got a couple questions here. You go ahead and queue up your PowerPoint, and I'll ask you a couple of these because Kristen had that one specifically that you wanted, which is how do I get my emails to grab attention and compel the recipient to respond so we can start a conversation. And then Eric had one probably for me is debating whether keeping my premium account or moving to LinkedIn Navigator. And I teach our social selling course at Sandler. So if you go to sandler.com/social selling success, you'll get some more information on a course that we have set up specifically for that. But Eric, I can answer that one really quick, which is I would move to Sales Navigator if you're doing that. And the big question with any of the paid or premium tools are if you're going to use them or not. So just having Navigator by itself doesn't generate you any revenue. But if you're using those tools on a regular basis, I think Sales Navigator is the better one to use there. So the other question here for you early, Brian, is have you had any issues concerning emailing for meetings with the CanSpam Act, and how do we make sure that the email marketing we're doing is compliant? So those two questions, how do we get a response, and then how do we make sure that we're not breaking the law when we do this?
Right. So I will I'll cover those in a little bit, and those are good questions. So I want you guys to think about right now your customer, and I want you to think about how many more customers you want, and what the value of that customer is to you. So get out a piece of paper or your phone or whatever you're using to take notes, and think of the average value of your customer and then the outlier value of that customer. So is it worth $10,000, $50,000, $250,000, $1 million, a couple $1,000? What's the value of the customer, and who is your ideal profile customer? Because we're going to do just a quick calculation. And then how many leads per month do you want? Do you want 5 leads a week? Do you want 20? Do you want 40? Do you want 200? Write down how many leads, what your target is. Because if you want to build a predictable outbound machine, you need to have an idea of what your target is and what you're working towards. Because as we build it out, you have to look at those numbers to identify, or at least have an idea of what your goal is. So is it 10, 20, 50, 100 leads per month? How many do you want? And how many do you want for your whole sales team? And write down that number. And then how many sales per month? So let's just use, I'll come up with a number right now. So say I want 20 leads per month and I want 2 more sales. So this is in addition to what I'm currently doing. And you can calculate your close rate as, say, 10%. So if you know your close rate number, you can use your close rate number of, say, 10% times the number of qualified leads you're looking for in meetings, and to get your sales per month. So get an idea of your target, and then we can work back as we go through this process. So I covered a little bit about breakthrough email, and I'll skip that. But the background was I was really looking for meetings with directors of marketing and begging to get meetings with directors of marketing. And this is pretty much how my day looked. It was just kind of a grind.
It's not a pretty view for your day then.
That was my day. That really was, my Monday and my Tuesday. And this is how it felt getting meetings with people, just because they were busy. I want to skip these slides because I want to just go right into the meat for you guys. The idea here is phone usage is down, and only 5% of people are actually picking up the phone. But if you look at, if you look at any organization, and say your target is the director of marketing, in my case, there's also a VP of marketing, there's a CMO, there's a CEO, there's a bunch of different people in the organization. And within the organization, there is a hierarchy, right? There is there's a hierarchy, there's internal social capital that everybody has, whether you're the director of marketing, VP marketing, you report into those people. And so one of the big breakthroughs that I had was when I realized that my target was the director of marketing, and I'd always get meetings with, the marketing assistant, the marketing manager, the agency, and in this case, I was selling media to, large agencies like Pepsi, large companies like Pepsi and McDonald's, and I would always get delegated down. So what I realized is that if I contacted the people above my target, the VP of marketing, the director of marketing, the CMO, the CEO, they would delegate to the people below them. So I would write an email to the VP of marketing, the CMO, and CEO, and they would say, that looks interesting. Let me forward this over to the director of marketing or the VP of marketing, which I never got meetings with. And all of a sudden I was with the person who was the decision maker. And in B2B sales, that's really the first step, like finding somebody who's qualified, finding somebody who has the ability to make a decision, and getting in front of that person from the very beginning. I equate it to selling a car to a 16-year-old. If you're a car salesman and you're trying to sell a car to somebody who's 16 years old, they're not able to buy. Really, their mom or dad is going to buy the car, even though the 16-year-old will have some influence. You really want to get to the father or the mother, because those are the decision makers. So if you're not at the decision maker level, you're not going to get the sale, which is ultimately our goal. This is kind of what it felt like when it started working, what it also felt like was that you could reach anybody you wanted to at any time. This isn't a slide, but this is something that I want to. So let's see.
Yeah, you want to talk a little bit about that waterfall technique, because I think that was one of the coolest things that you taught me when we were talking about cold emailing, is that it's really not just going from the top down, because I think everybody in selling realizes you'd like to start at the top, but by emailing sort of a wall of sound to all four of those levels, you usually get somebody to respond and make it a priority at the level where they need to respond, right?
Right. Yeah. So you meet with who you sound like, right? So, and you meet with who you target. So if your messaging is at the director or VP of marketing level, and you're writing the CEO, they're going to say, okay, it sounds like this is marketing. It catches my eye, as far as what they're saying, and let's forward this over to our team and have them look at it. I'll show you. Let me show you guys an example of this. Let's see. I'll share my screen. All right, so here's an example of an email and what we do. And I want everybody to just take a look at the first two sentences. So I'm writing in hopes of finding the appropriate person who handles multicultural media. Now at McDonald's, when I wrote this team, there was at least 500 people at McDonald's who handle multicultural media. Now at a normal company, it would be much smaller, but McDonald's actually does a lot of multicultural marketing, especially all around the world. I also wrote to person X, person Y, and person Z in that pursuit. If it makes sense to talk, let me know how your calendar looks. So what I'm really doing here, if you identify, you can use this same script by changing the multicultural media, changing the names. What you're doing is you're trying to navigate the organization, and you're trying to use the waterfall to have the people that you're writing to respond and forward you over to the people in the organization. I don't CC anybody, because if you CC everybody, one person can reply and say, hey, not interested, please don't write, and then you have no ability to kind of leverage the names of everybody else. What I want to do is I want to create some confusion inside the organization, and get them to respond, to forward it over. And once I have the leverage of one person, I very likely have the meeting, because if the CMO tells the VP of marketing to take a look at this, the VP of marketing is much more likely to meet with you rather than not meeting. One of the most important thing about outbound and creating predictability is I want you to look at and think of outbound like a triangle. So everybody draw a triangle right now if you've got a scrap piece of paper, and we're going to fill this in. So at the top of the triangle is our target. So the target is the company. It could be the people. It could be how you build the list. It could be the niche. It could be your ideal qualified buyer. And actually, below this, let's put our target. Your target leads and your target sales. So write down, earlier we talked a little bit about this. How many target leads do you want per month? And how many sales do you want per month? So in my example, I'll just say I want 20 leads or 20 meetings, and I want 2 sales. So I want 2 of the 20 to become customers, and I want 20 additional leads. So at the top is target. At the bottom is say the method of contact. So how you contact them, right? Whether it's email or a phone call or a trade show or they come to your website or through a webinar in this case. So that's the method of contact. And then at the bottom right of the triangle, and I apologize for my handwriting, is the message. So in the case of email, it could be the subject line, it could be the copy, the first sentence, the call to action, how you establish credibility, the pitch as people describe it. So let's take a little poll and figure out which is the most important. Is it the target? Is it the message? Is it the method of contact? So I'll give you guys a second, and let's just do this in the chat. So I'll, in the bottom right-hand corner, look into the chat and just decide, is it the target, is it the method of contact, or is it the message that is the most important when it comes to outbound? And then ultimately, when it comes to creating a predictable lead-generating machine. So we heard from, let's see.
Got a couple of votes for message. We have a couple of votes for target.
So let's from Luis and Christopher.
Lauren, Steven, Stephanie, they're sticking with message. It looks like message is going to win the day here, Brian.
So you would think that message is the most important, but actually the target is the most important. And hear me out. Our end outcome is sales. And one thing I've learned going through the Sandler process is, I want to sell to a thirsty crowd. I want to sell to somebody who has a need, is in pain, they're the decision maker, they want to buy right now, and they have the authority, right? So they're BANT qualified. They have budget, authority, need, timing, and then I like to look at competitors as well. There aren't a lot of competitors, and all win out the sale. So I look at that and say, I could find somebody who has no need, no timing, no money, and I could have the best message in the world and then try and go through a sales process, and it's going to be a lot of work, and I'm not going to get a sale. So what I want is to really spend some time and think about who is my ideal profile client and what is the way to find and build a list of people who actually need what I have to sell. Right, and they have the symptoms, they have the pain, they have the money, and spend more time there, because then you're going fishing with big fish who are hungry versus lots of fish who are small and aren't hungry and aren't going to bite off on your bait.
So that brings up a couple of questions from me, Brian. I guess the first is, really it's all three though, or they're kind of like our success triangles at Sandler. You can't take out any one of those, because if you have the right person and the right message, but you send it via carrier pigeon, then it never gets there.
Right.
That's not going to do very good either. So I love that. All three of those are critical messages. But when you talk about the target, I'm guessing most people can kind of make a script or an outline of what their ideal client looks like. But how do you recommend finding emails and building your list? Do you buy lists? Do you just research them one at a time? How do you handle that?
So two things. How do most people find their target, right? And are they good at it to the point where they can identify somebody who has the need before they target? So they're likely to buy. And what I've found is that people actually are not very good at this. It's kind of like everyone who is like, Mike, are you a good driver?
Well, yeah, of course.
Okay, so it's like 85% of people think that they're good drivers, or and so we overestimate our ability in one area that we don't know that that we actually have a weakness. And I didn't learn this until I started working with all different people, all different types of businesses, different cultures, different countries, different languages. And every time I was like, well, listen, and this is what they'll say, that like, Brian, I've got a pretty good idea of who my client is, right? And they're like, right. It's a medium-sized company with 100 to 300 employees, and it's typically the IT department, right? 100 to 300. It's like you're just describing all these companies. You're not describing the trigger events that lead somebody to buy, right? So for that same example, what we'll do is, so if we look at our process, I'll go back, and then I'll also, and this will cover your question.
Yeah, I love that, because I think you are right. A lot of people think about demographic information rather than the psychographic information of what causes them to need your services or what causes them to be an ideal client. Because at Sandler, we found that you can have two identical demographic information companies, and one can be an ideal client, the other one can be a big pain in the butt, or just not ever going to buy from you because they don't have the right mindset, right?
Yeah, they don't have the mindset, they don't have the money, they don't have the pain. Just because they have 200 employees doesn't mean that they're going to actually buy from you. I'm assuming that people understand Sandler's pain methodology and identifying people who need what you have.
Yeah, just a reason to buy from you. Yeah.
So if I look at the process, the first process, the one of the areas that we spend most of our time is actually interviewing your customers. So I don't know the phrases, I don't know the language, I don't know. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. I don't know what to say until we talk to your customers. So in our course, One Lead a Day, you'll actually interview your customers. Even if we work with you and we generate the leads for you, we're not going to know what to say until we start talking to and looking at your customers. So we'll interview your customers, we'll select the highest value customers, and we'll start looking at the ways in which they described what frustrated them, what they wanted, what they're concerned about, and then the straw that broke the camel's back, the thing that happened where all of a sudden they decided, hey, we have to do something about this and make a switch. So what we do in our marketing, write this down, we really market the symptoms. Like, what is it that they're experiencing? So, and then when we target, we're targeting the environment on like what actually changed within their environment. So a couple examples to think about targeting. So it was a software company. They had this, it was like a quality assurance software, and they're working with all these manufacturing companies. And we were doing the interviews, and we interviewed them, and we finally said, what was it? So you had all these issues, but what was it that actually changed? And it was, well, we got a new chief operating officer, and once the chief operating officer came in, saw what was going on, he said, listen, we need the KPIs, key performance indicators. We don't have it. We have no way of getting it. So we need software to fix this. So the trigger event was actually, a new hire in the organization. Now you can actually identify when a new COO comes in at a company between 100 and 300 employees. And many times when you look at, the indicator before somebody buys, the thing that changed that like actually led to the purchase, it could be somebody coming into the organization. Another example was a staffing company. We looked at all their clients and identified, okay, your best client has, produced 10 new hires, or 10 recs that you filled. Your number 2 was 2 recs. This is, the value of this client is 5 times more than, the other customers. What's different about this? Well, it turns out that the person or the company moved from Australia to the US, and they needed to hire up a whole team, and they were a software company. So they needed, developers. So any ideas, Mike, how you could circumvent that and find more, Australian software companies moving to the US to target?
Gosh, I haven't thought about it, but I'm imagining that they're going to tell somebody online, or they're going to be doing some other stuff that you could find. So I'd put a Google search alert out or something like that.
Right. So imagine that you're the CEO of a Australian software company, right? And you have to move your company in 6 months. What are the things that you're going to need to do to move your company?
I'm sure there's a lot of legal stuff, but there is real estate and all kinds of things, right?
Right. So you're going to need new what? Real estate, meaning what?
A building.
You're going to need new office.
Yeah.
Right. You're going to, so say, let's see. So we have our CEO and we're 6 months out. So we've got our CEO, we're 6 months out, and ultimately, they got this purchase and they got 10 new people. So they had an office. What else has to happen before you get an office?
You're going to have to get a business license or some sort of organization set up.
Sure. So license, you'll have to move, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'll have a moving company. Let's see, wherever that is. Moving company, you'll get a licensing office. There's probably companies who specialize in this. So you have moving companies, lawyers. Who works with office space?
Commercial real estate people.
So you have moving companies, lawyers, commercial real estate. So if you're targeting companies like this, trying to find them, you can find other organizations. You can partner with other organizations, whether it's moving companies, lawyers, commercial real estate, who are going to be helping all sorts of different customers in the life cycle. So the example that I explained in my course, my dad had a landscaping company, and I grew up in Sonoma, California. And if you look, it was high-end residential, kind of $50,000 to $100,000, projects, not, put in some shrubs and put in a lawn. And if you thought about like who do you think his customers were, and what were the trigger events for somebody spending $100,000 on landscaping? Any idea, Mike?
No, but somebody, I'm guessing nicer neighborhoods and stuff, right? Or commercial.
So you could target like demographic, right? Like the neighborhoods. But if you think about it, let's see. All right. So if they bought a new house, or did a major remodel, there's a high likelihood that they do landscaping, because if you own the house for 10 years, you're not going to do anything. If you put in a pool, right? This is my attempt at a driveway. If you put in a driveway, there's a high likelihood that you do. So my dad can talk to real estate agents. My dad could look up home sales, right? So you can also do this. So like if you're in staffing, you could look up office space leases where somebody was coming into a new city, was not just moving from one part of the town to the other, right? Because like so again, if you go back to this target is really looked over by everybody. And if all I really need is 2 sales, how can I find, the 10 people out there that are, moving offices, have 100 people, and, are doing software development. So if you go back for your own customers, everybody listening, think about all the things that happen before they come to you. What are all the, the things that have to line up for them to, like, so recently I bought a new car. I moved from New York City. I moved to California, and I got to California and I needed to, buy a new car because we had 1 car, we needed 2. And so, like, what if the car salesmen were working with real estate agents and knew every time somebody was moving, from out of state and had a high likelihood. Now the real estate agent does nothing with that customer, right? Just like the lawyer or the moving company or the commercial real estate, organization, hey, they got their customer, great, moving on, right? Yep. So how can you cooperate with the market, and what are your customers are already buying? Is the likelihood is that, or what have they bought, to lead up to.
Yeah, I get that. And I love the trigger events and leading indicators on these, because it definitely makes it a lot easier than if you're trying to sell real estate, calling and emailing somebody that already has an agent doesn't help you very much. So if we move down to that message part of it, I think, everybody loves these good techniques and stuff, and they want to say, what's the magic subject line? What's the magic words? What's right. the ask at the end that I put in? What is there anything really specific about the contents of it, or how do we craft a message then that attracts those people?
So if I distill the 2 things that make the most difference for an email, and then one that's implicit. So the 2 things are: you create an opportunity for the reader, right? Mm-hmm. And you establish credibility, right? I'm not going to waste your time. So if my email is like, hey, Mike, I've got, 1 million salespeople that are looking for sales training and all around the world, and I'd love to talk to you about how we can promote Sandler. Mm-hmm. What's the likelihood that you'd respond to that email?
Pretty high.
Yeah. Right. If I'm like, hey, Mike, I've got this CRM system. It's a Salesforce competitor, and I really think you should look at it. What's the likelihood that you're going to respond to that email?
Not very high.
Right. So I have this CRM system. I want you to look at it. I have this 1 million salespeople who are looking for sales training, and they need to hear about what it is that you offer and what it is that you do. You're likely to respond. So everyone's attracted to, what they want.
Yeah. What's in it for them?
Yeah. What's in it for them? So when we do like symptom marketing, which is what are the fears, frustrations, desires, what are the pains? But I look at like the emotions of the pain and how they're affected. And if I had any pick, it depends on your product, but if I had any pick, I'd look for what's frustrating them, what's frustrating the decision maker. They've tried to fix it, they haven't been able to fix it. Listen, we've hired salespeople, we've done trade shows, we've done content marketing, we're paying money on search, we're all cold calling, and why don't we get any leads? Right? So those are frustrations that my clients have because they want leads. They're doing all this work. We're pretty good once we get a meeting, but we just need more, quality leads. So I'm really looking for those frustrations. We get those from the interviews. So you interview your clients. I can guess what your clients care about, but I don't really know. Mm-hmm. And we get the language from your clients. So we want to mirror what your prospects and your current clients are thinking about. And it's done in a specific way. So if we think about the, kind of the buyer's journey, Let's see.
And once again, we're about halfway through, so we can reset here. We're speaking with Brian Kruzberger. He's the founder of Breakthrough Email, teaching us how to break through the noise and get an email through to a target that actually gets a meeting and starts a sales conversation. And I am Mike Montague, Vice President of Online Learning at Sandler Training. We do sales management and customer service training for individuals and organizations all around the world. So if you have any questions about that, you can visit Sandler Training. But Brian, back to sending an email
you don't like
that works.
All right. So when people interview their customers or get a testimonial, you've worked with them, they hey, Mike, you're super responsive. Anytime I were going to refer, a sales training company, I'd happily refer Sandler. You see these things, online. So as far as like a testimonial or interview, or they'll say, listen, we've already interviewed our customers. We've talked to our customers. We know, what it's all about. So there's the after unit. Most interviews are done from, after working with them, but there's another time unit, and that's the during unit, right? So that is what life was like while you're working with Sandler. So hey, we're working with our trainer. They're amazing. We're learning a lot. We just implemented the what is it you call when you start a meeting? Pattern
interrupt?
No,
or upfront contract.
Yeah, so we just implemented upfront contract that works really well. We're getting to know more about our customers' pain than we ever had an idea. Right, this is the during unit, and then there's the before unit. So the before unit is, hey, we're trying to grow sales, but we're not able to. We hired all these salespeople, and I'm allergic to salespeople. We're cold calling, and we're not closing as much, as we'd like, or we're losing a lot of the contracts, or the contract values are a lot smaller, or whatever is going on. So when you interview your customers, you want to interview them from the before unit. What life was like before they were working with you, not what's life like during or what's life like after, right? So what is the fear, frustration, desire, hope that they have before? So like everyone who is here right now is frustrated with, outbound lead generation, cold calling, frustrated that or concerned that, all the rejection. They want to double their business. They want to increase sales. They want to grow their company, right? Those are that's language that people use when I interview them. And so what you do when you interview them, you take the person back to what life was like before, and then you write down how they felt about everything. Now, what this does is for the person who gets your email, when you receive the email, it's like, oh, do I want to double my business? Do I want to grow my company? Do I want to increase my pipeline? Do I want, 1 lead a day or 20 qualified meetings? Do I want to build a predictable lead generating machine? Do I want a predictable sales process? This is language that I will hook the reader and say, oh, I relate to that. And they'll say, okay, because you described it in a way that I can relate to, use the waterfall. They'll say, listen, let's look at this. Maybe I'm interested. But if you go back to it, the target's the most important, because ultimately we want the sale right down here. And so we want the person who is the target, who is the decision maker, to respond. In answer to your other question, how do you find the data, right? The data is out there. There's dozens of companies. Email addresses, phone numbers, titles, companies you can find anywhere. So the data we really personalize depending on like who you are, what you're looking for. There's a bunch of different companies. I personally, we pay for the data anywhere from 50 cents to $1 a contact. But it's more important to identify the types of organizations that you should be targeting and the trigger events. And if you look at our process, we always do that from the interviews. We just reverse engineer and model. Let's see, let me look at this.
And you want to share a little bit about the structure of the email? Because I thought that was really cool when I learned it from you. But one of the big ones for me is subject line. That so many people, when they're trying to sell or market, get way too complicated in the subject line, and they're writing features and benefits and trying to use trigger words. That what you and I have found in our research is that really short subject lines that a human being would write get opened way more than others, because you're just writing appropriate person or question or introduction, and they're diving. They have to open the email to figure out what's in there, rather than when you say one time only, 50% off their world's greatest blah, blah, blah. Somebody sees that in their inbox, they just hit delete, right?
So yeah, for subject lines, if I were to poll the audience, everybody listening right now, subject lines are one of the most important things to outbound emailing or cold emailing. Now, the reality is it's probably number 14 on my list in order, right? So it's target, and then it's, modeling your best customers, identifying who the decision maker is, identifying the language that frustrates, the individual, identifying the trigger events, looking for partner companies, finding the right data, maybe a few other things. And then the subject line is just, the reality is it's just the subject of the email. I'd like to say, not enough for them to say no, and I don't want it to sound like a commercial, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want it to sound like an email that they'd receive. If you look at the email, most people forget about the preview pane, right? So you're going to see the first sentence and the second sentence, very likely in your phone. So subject lines I use are appropriate person or calendar, and I'm writing to 4 people in an organization. But the real magic to get the response is the quality of the opportunity and the quality of the message that's in the center of the email. I'm looking for 5 different hooks. I call this the deep sea fishing technique. So 5 different ways in which I can engage the reader that they may be interested. So if I were to look at my clients, a predictable lead generating machine, right, would be one. Increasing pipeline, doubling revenue, growing the company would be 2, right? So increasing sales, pipeline, doubling, growing. That's the language that my clients use. I would say missing numbers would be like how a VP of sales would describe it, right? As far as a concern, hitting their numbers would be, say, 3. Number 4 is, is more of like the rejection, of cold calling, or just wasting time. Don't want to waste time. So that's, say, 4 different hooks, for our clients, our targets, in the way that they relate to what it is that I solve for them. So if they don't respond to that, guess what? They're fine with sales, they're fine with leads, they don't need any of this, and they don't care. And I'm totally cool, moving on, if they don't have the need, because it's like they just went to a restaurant and they don't need to go to my restaurant because they just ate. They're fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
To establish credibility, very often I'll just reference customers that they've heard of. They haven't heard of us, our company, Voodoovox in this case, but they have heard of Burger King, P&G, and Chili's. So I'm borrowing the credibility of working with these other people and relating it to the person that I'm writing to. And then your requests at the end of this email. Now, this is just the first email in a 4-email sequence. If you're the appropriate person to speak with, what does your calendar look like? If not, whom do you recommend I talk to? So if it makes sense to talk, let me know how your calendar looks. And if not, who should I talk to?
And we did have a question here from Leslie about what does that follow-up sequence look like. So I love you hit the big, introduction, the opportunity, and the ask parts of that email structure. Is that where we're going next? How do we follow up until we get a response from this, or what happens next?
Yeah, so the follow-ups, we really don't have enough time to go through, kind of the depth of all these different messages. the key, if I were to focus on, well, let me explain. So I covered the first two most important things. So establishing opportunity and showing credibility. The third is implicit, and this is something that, as I was working with people, it kind of came out, and it was like, listen, I've decided that this target is so good for me, right? Like it's another Australian company moving to, New York City, and they have software, and I'm a staffing company. I'm going to do whatever I need to get a meeting with these people, right? And they will say no to me. And if I really believe it, I'm going to hear no from 2 or 3 people in the organization. So implicitly, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get that meeting. And so my judgment is, if I'm not willing to work at it and it's not a high enough value for me to meet with them, then I'm probably talking to or going after the wrong target, right? So the third thing is just will. Like, I'm going to do whatever it takes. I mean, I was reaching out to, I was working with Western Union and Bank of America, MasterCard. We had this remittance product, and it was just such a good fit. I mean, I sat with the head of marketing, or the VP of marketing for Western Union, and I was in the meeting, and the person just kind of turned to me in the middle of the meeting. And it's like, wow, this just makes so much sense. I mean, there's just so much overlap between what you guys do and what we need. And it's like, I know, I chose you. Like, I picked you out of all the marketers out there, in about a year of throwing spaghetti against the wall, trying to figure out like who it is I should talk to. And I know that this is such a great fit for you because it helps you in the challenges that you guys have. So it was all by design. It wasn't like, hey, I think you guys might want this. What do you think? And so when I reached out to MoneyGram, which is Western Union's competitor, the VP of marketing said no. And it was like, no, you don't get it. Like, you need this, right? And then like the director of marketing said no. And it's like, well, okay, respectfully, you guys don't understand enough. I'm going to the CMO. I'm going to the CEO. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get that meeting, because you guys, you need this, even though you don't know that you need this, right? Because I've been in that space, and I knew so much about the space. So when it comes to follow-up, do whatever it takes, right?
Yeah.
If you really believe it. And if you don't really believe it, then you should probably be targeting somebody else, right?
Yeah, I think that's great. And did you want to, I know we're down to about 10 minutes, and we wanted to leave some time for Q&A. So if you have any questions, type them into the Q&A section now, and we will respond to those as best we can. But I guess wrapping up here, Brian, is there a part of the method or anything else that we need to cover on your triangle there? We didn't talk about the best way to do this. Do you like in-mail? Do you like direct email messages? Is there anything about the method or the way we send it that is important here?
Yes, the way, I don't really care about the way. So in my method, it's kind of following the golden rule: do unto others as you want done to you, right? Mm-hmm. So I think of, okay, where is my client? What do they, how do they communicate? Where are they? Right? So I've told people, and they're like, listen, I don't pick up the phone anymore. Right? Like, I don't check voicemails. My wife, like, I can't even leave her a voicemail. She doesn't check them. So I know to text message her. So in mail, I think, if you look at a VP C-level person, are they on LinkedIn all day? My answer is no. They're managing their team. They could be on Slack, or they're on email, or they're in meetings the whole day. So my best case is an in-mail, is that it goes to the person's email, right? So it's like an in-mail that forwards over to the person. So that's great. Now, if I was going to try and reach out to a recruiter, recruiters are going to spend a lot of time in in-mail. Now, I think in-mail it's a bullet in your gun. Like, use it, leverage it, go and find leads, qualified leads using in-mail. But like, use email. You could use like companies like Connect and Sell to, do voicemails or cold calling, but, reach out to people where they are. And most of my buyers, they're on email all day long. it's crowded. They're getting 100 to 300 emails a day. So my target is to be in the top 1 to 3% of all the emails that they get. So and we spend 5 to 10 hours on our email to do that. But once you have that email, once you have that messaging, then anybody on your team can send them, and you can use all sorts of software to send the emails, do the automatic replies.
Yeah, saving those templates are huge. Yeah.
Yeah. So once you have messaging or templates that's based on the reader and how they look at the world and the language that they use, what I don't do is I don't write all about myself, and that's where everybody starts. Like,
and then we did have that one question about the CanSpam Act stuff too. Do you have any quick tips on that? I mean, basically,
I think
how many times should we make touch without hearing back from a prospect? Jordan just asked that question in the question area. But also, I know, how many times can we email somebody before we're annoying or before we're breaking a CanSpam law? Any thoughts there on how many touches and CanSpam activity?
Yeah. So again, I go back to the golden rule, right? So it's ultimately, it's not about me, it's about them, right? So if I'm the CEO, do I want, 7, I've heard 7 is the magic number for reaching out to people.
Yeah.
And and I'm not looking at quantity, right? It's like, it's not a numbers game. It's how can I create an opportunity? Now, Mike, if I wrote you and it was like, I have 1 million salespeople who are looking for sales training, do I need to write you 7 times? Right? Or if I'm writing you 7 times about my CRM that I really think you should look at, I'm just trying to like will you into into submission. So my gut, this is only my personal feel, is 4 emails over a month. If the person hasn't responded, they're not interested. It's kind of like and also think of it like dating. If you went on a date with a girl and called her 2 times or 3 times or 4 times after the date, chances are she's not interested. Chances are likely that they're not interested. So people are very good when they think of dating because they're not going to push it too far. But if the person is let's see, actually, I might have a good email.
I think that's great. And this will take us to our next question too. And I guess the CanSpam answer is just like what you said about the golden rule is if somebody asks you to stop emailing them and take them off your list. That's really the whole crux of the legal stuff there. And then we had a question from Al here about
give them a way to opt out, right?
Yeah, give them a way to opt out. For sure. That's great.
Most of those systems, have an automatic. I would just Google the CanSpam. Every country is different. Like in Canada, you can't send outbound emails. I think you can from Canada to the US. Here's a great follow-up email. This is a permission to close your file email. You can also Google this email and you can probably find it somewhere. But this will get 8 out of 10 people who never respond to you to respond. And this is a technique that I learned from Sandler, which is, closing the file. Essentially, hey, I'm closing the files for the month. Typically when people don't respond, it's because they're either really busy or aren't interested. If you aren't interested, do I have permission to close your file? If you are still interested, what do you recommend as the next step?
That's perfect. And then Al asked, I want to get this last question in here, and then we can wrap it up and tell everybody what to do if they're interested next. But what kind of responses do you get to the what does your calendar look like call to action? I found that people either say, well, I guess it seems a little wishy-washy or open for me as a sales trainer. Do you get good responses to what does your calendar look like? And what's the best way to get that?
Let's see. So, sorry.
And then fun one at the end, an anonymous attendee says, totally off topic, but you're in California, longboard or funboard on surfing?
I lost them.
You're from New York. Yeah.
Well, no, you surf.
Let's okay, good.
Let me, so calendar. So
Yeah.
if you think of schedule, you're thinking of to-do lists and you're thinking of today, right? How's your schedule look?
Yeah.
Right? I'm busy. If you think of calendar, you think in weeks and months. Most people, if you write them, they're not going to meet you for 10 days to 2 weeks to 3 weeks. I've been put off, a month to 6 months before in meetings. And so if you ask how their schedule looks, if normally a salesperson's like, hey, how does your schedule look tomorrow? Right? Like their schedule is busy tomorrow. I'm not working tomorrow, or whatever it is.
Right.
So give them space. And then I ask them I ask them to talk. I don't ask for a meeting. I don't ask for a call, or I'll ask to speak with them, because I'm not implying what it is that they, I'm not suggesting the way in which we talk. All I want them to do is be open to the idea of the conversation and to reply back with interest. And if I can get that, then I can get the meeting, and there's all sorts of emails, but I just want them to, reply back and show interest or forward me in the right direction with a positive intent or positive response. And, and then from there, we'll schedule the call, schedule the meeting. The mistake I see, salespeople are pushy, and there's a whole grinder. I'm just going to grind it out. I'm just going to will you into submission. And I think that there's really an opportunity for more elegance, or just the kind of a more delicate, softer approach, and one with a lot more science, or just getting them to be interested and open to the conversation versus I'm just going, hey, how do you want, you want to talk? Hey, how's 10 or 2 for 15 minutes? Kind of the trial closes, and just, hey, this looks interesting. Let's set up a time to talk. We get 80% of people that we contact to respond. The normal response that people will get is between 1 and 5% or 1 and 3%. And we're getting 8 out of 10 people that we reach out to respond. And half of those are positive for a meeting.
That's awesome. So let's wrap this up for everybody. And Leslie asked, can they get a copy of the presentation, or will we send the recording out and stuff there? You want to talk about what happens once we sign off here in the next 2 minutes?
Sure. I think we can get the link to the presentation, and we can also we did record the presentation. What I'd recommend is go to breakthroughemail.com if you want to set up a time to talk in the new year. About how to do this for your team. You can Google. You can go to oneleadaday.com. It's just oneleadaday.com. And download there's a number of different resources that you can download, and then we'll send a follow-up email to everybody, just kind of with more directions, more different things that you can do to download, or to start working together if it makes sense to work together.
Awesome. And from Sandler's perspective, if you want more information on Sandler Training, the website's just sandler.com. If you put in the /social selling success, you'll find out more information on my course. But if you go to Sandler.com and click on the resources tab, we have a white paper, 6 social selling emails that will land you an appointment. A lot of the same tips you heard today and some of the templates that you can use are available there too. So reach out to us and we'd be more than happy to help. Anything else you want to add, Brian?
I would say to look at the predictability every month, just look at 3 numbers to find the bottleneck, right? So if your target is, say, sales is 2, and my meetings is 20. So in my case, meetings, I wanted 20 meetings, I want 2 sales. How many outreaches do I need to get 20 meetings? So in our case, if we're doing 80% response rate, and then we know that half of those people that we reach out to who respond are going to be interested, I'll just do the calculation and I'll say, All right, 20. So if I reach out to 50 companies, and get 80% of those to respond, so 40 of those to respond, and then out of the responses, half of them will take a meeting. So meetings, so I'll get 20. So I know to create, a predictable outbound machine, we have to do outreach for 50. We need to get 20 meetings. And if we get 20 meetings, we'll get 2 sales. Now, when you really improve the target, when you really improve the messaging, now you might need to reach out to 500 companies to get 20 meetings to get 2 sales. At that point, we know that the messaging and the target could really improve. And so as you look out now, maybe you did no outreach, right, in this last month, right? Like you wanted to. People schedule on Fridays, like I'm going to cold call from 1 to 3, and then they never do it, right? So either get somebody else to do it, hire somebody to do it, whether it's us or somebody else, have them go through the course, have them do the outreach if you already have baseline numbers, or get software to do it so it does it for you. But there is, even if you don't have time, you don't have to manually do it like I did, writing individual emails. There's software, there's agencies, there's all sorts of different options to do the outreach for you. So then, if you're listening, you can go on the meetings, you can get the sales. And, and so the idea is, whatever your bottleneck is, whether it's you're not doing outreach and you should be, or you're doing outreach and it's not as effective as as you need it to be, do the outreach, improve that part of it, and then so for next year you can actually create some predictability, to generate more business. And then once you have that predictability, then you'll know your numbers. And if you don't know your numbers, your step is to go and try and figure out what your numbers are. And then look at the weakest link in there and keep improving that to hit your numbers, increase your pipeline, grow your business, double your sales.
I like it. Thanks, Brian, for the time. Again, that's Brian Kreuzberger from Breakthrough Email. I'm Mike Montague with Sandler Training. Until next time, good selling, everybody. Have a great week.
All right. See you guys. Merry Christmas.